Let's just start with that quote, because it perfectly and kind of hilariously captures the paradox we're diving into today. You know, we're all taught that being strong means pushing through, locking our feelings down. But what if that's exactly backward? What if the science actually shows that the harder you run from a feeling, the stronger it gets? It doesn't just disappear. It just goes into the background, building up this invisible debt that your body, not your mind, is eventually going to be forced to pay back with some serious interest. Today, we are breaking down this exact process, the suppression-debt loop. We're going to uncover the hidden, high-interest cost of emotional avoidance and see how the very act of trying to keep it together might be the one thing that's secretly causing us to fall apart. All right, here's our game plan. We'll start with a phenomenon called the delayed explosion. Then we'll unpack the core mechanism, that's the suppression-debt loop, and see why our brains fall into this ancient trap. After that, we'll get super practical with a tool called the 90-second rule, and we'll wrap it all up with our final, crucial takeaway. So let's kick things off with an experience I think many of us will find, well, uncomfortably familiar. That moment you completely lose it over something that seems, on the surface, completely and utterly tiny. Just think about it for a second. You've had a crazy stressful week, maybe even a stressful year. You've been juggling everything, work, family, all of it. You keep telling yourself and everyone else that you're totally fine, you're in control. And then a glass of water spills, or you can't find your keys. And boom, you're hit with this tidal wave of rage or tears that feels so huge it makes no sense. Well, it was never about the water. It was about the water being the very last drop in a bucket that was already filled to the brim. There's actually a scientific name for this: affective accumulation. Affective just means anything related to emotions. It's the process where all those little unfelt, unacknowledged feelings, the annoyance from that meeting, the flicker of sadness from a phone call, they don't just go away. They stack up. They accumulate inside your nervous system, quietly jacking up your baseline level of internal stress until you're living right on the edge of your capacity, day after day, and you don't even know it. And here's the kicker. Your brain is wired for efficiency, right? So from its point of view, dodging a painful feeling is a smart, short-term win. You feel a pang of insecurity, you immediately grab your phone and start scrolling, and poof, the feeling seems gone. Success. But there is a massive hidden cost. You might think you've deleted the file, but really, you've just hidden the icon, and now your brain is burning a huge amount of energy to keep it suppressed. This is the metabolic tax. It's the insane interest payment on your emotional debt, and it's why just avoiding your feelings can leave you more exhausted than a full day of hard physical labor. So that metabolic tax, that deep down exhaustion, it's all being powered by this engine running in the background. It's a cycle that explains how the mind thinks it's moved on, while the body is forced to keep a perfect physiological score. This is what we call the suppression-debt loop. The best way to visualize this is to picture your entire inner world as a giant reservoir. Every stressor, every tough conversation, every emotion you push down, it all adds more water. Now, if you have healthy release valves, like talking, exercise, or just letting yourself feel, the pressure stays manageable. But if you keep all those valves welded shut, pretending the water isn't rising, the pressure against that dam just keeps building and building, silently, until it hits an inevitable breaking point. Okay, this is the key to the whole thing. It's a critical split that happens during avoidance, and it's called cognitive somatic decoupling. It sounds fancy, but it's simple. Cognitive is your thinking mind. Somatic is your feeling body. The decoupling is the disconnect. Your mind goes, nope, not dealing with that right now, and it successfully pushes the feeling away. But your body, it doesn't get the memo. It keeps running the full stress program, pumping cortisol, tensing muscles, preparing for a threat your mind insists isn't even there. So let's walk through how this loop actually plays out, step by step. First, you get an affective surge. A wave of anger or sadness washes over you. Second, your avoidance reflex kicks in instantly. You get busy, you start scrolling, you do anything but feel. Third, the decoupling happens. Your mind says we're fine, but your body is still on high alert. And finally, somatic sequestration. It's just a scientific way of saying that unresolved stress gets stored, or literally stuck, in your body's tissues as chronic tension. Now this slide just lays out that disconnect so clearly. Take a second and just look. On the left, you've got the story the mind tells itself. The feeling's gone, I forgot what even started it, I'm moving on. It's a nice, clean story. But on the right, you have the body's reality. It's still on high alert, acting like the threat is right there. It doesn't remember the story, but it absolutely remembers the physiology, the tight chest, the clenched jaw, and it just stores that tension waiting for a resolution that never comes. Over time, this constant low-grade stress creates a cumulative wear and tear on your body, a biological burden called allostatic load. Think of it like a slow, corrosive rust that forms from being perpetually damped with stress. Your nervous system gets brittle. Your ability to handle new stress shrinks and shrinks. So when your internal stress reservoir is already simmering at 90% full, it only takes a tiny 10% trigger, like that spilled water, to cause a total system meltdown. That's not an overreaction. It's a liquidation. It's your body finally forcing you to pay the emotional debt you've been racking up for months. So the obvious question here is, if this system is so costly and so damaging, why on earth is our brain wired to do it? Well, the answer lies in a fundamental glitch in our ancient survival hardware as it tries to navigate our complex, modern world. It all comes down to something called survival primacy. Your brain is not primarily designed for your long-term happiness. It's designed for your immediate survival, period. It will always prioritize what it thinks is the safest option in this exact moment, even if that choice guarantees you'll be miserable later on. And that's where the critical error happens. And here's the problem. To your brain's ancient operating system, the part that evolved out on the savannah, there is no real difference between a physical predator, like a lion, and an overwhelming emotional threat, like the feeling of shame or rejection. The perceived danger is the same, annihilation. So the response is the same, run or hide. Avoiding the feeling of shame triggers the exact same immediate relief circuit as successfully hiding from a lion. The brain just logs it as a win, reinforcing avoidance as a life-saving move. Driving this whole engine is a powerful cognitive bias known as the affective forecasting error. Basically, your brain is a terrible fortune teller. It operates on this deeply flawed assumption that if you actually allow yourself to feel a powerful negative emotion, that feeling will be unbearable, and even worse, that it will last forever. It literally can't imagine the feeling just crusting and passing like a wave. So it chooses what feels like the safer path, suppression, trading your long-term peace for a fleeting moment of perceived safety. Okay, so we get the problem, we get the mechanism, and we get the flawed psychology behind it. That's the diagnosis. So now, how do we break this cycle? Let's move from just understanding the problem to a powerful, science-backed tool for building real emotional agency. The core of this entire practice boils down to a simple time frame, 90 seconds. Now, this isn't some arbitrary number or a self-help gimmick. It's grounded in the work of neuroanatomist Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor, and it represents a profound shift from being controlled by your emotions to learning how to consciously navigate them. So here's the science. When an emotional event happens, it triggers a chemical cascade in your brain. From the moment it's triggered, it takes about 90 seconds for those chemicals to be released, surge through your bloodstream, and then get fully flushed out of your system. Get this, any emotional reaction that lasts longer than 90 seconds is you, consciously or not, choosing to re-stimulate that circuit by replaying the thought that triggered it. The initial biological event is finite. The story we attach to it, well, that can be infinite. So how do we actually practice this? It's a simple 3-step process. When a difficult feeling hits, instead of running, you pause. First, observe the sensation. Don't analyze it, just notice it. Where is it? A tightness in your throat? Heat in your chest? Second, use somatic labeling. Describe what you're feeling in purely physical, neutral terms. And finally, you just let the wave break. You commit to giving it 90 seconds of your undivided attention, allowing it to peak and pass without fighting it or feeding it. This slide shows the crucial little shift that makes this whole thing work. On the left, you have the story, where you fuse with the emotion. I am anxious. It's an identity. It's a judgment. But on the right, you have the sensation. Here, you step back and you become a curious observer of the physical data. I am noticing a tightness in my throat. This simple change in language is profound. It moves the activity in your brain from the reactive, emotional parts to the objective, observant prefrontal cortex. You're no longer the victim of the feeling. You're the researcher of the sensation. And that brings us to the central insight of this entire explainer. It's a simple but incredibly profound truth about what it really means to heal and build genuine, lasting resilience. Just let that sink in for a moment. Real agency, real resilience, it doesn't come from building bigger walls to keep feelings out. It comes from learning how to build a container inside yourself that is strong enough to hold them, to let them move through you without destroying you. The goal isn't to never feel pain or anxiety. The goal is to learn how to metabolize those feelings, to let them inform you instead of letting them infect you by storing them away in your body. Ultimately, this is the choice we face every single time a difficult emotion comes up. And it's not a choice between pain and no pain. It's a choice between the short pain of allowing an emotion to exist for 90 seconds, which leads to the long peace that comes from clearing that emotional debt, versus the short-term relief of avoidance, which, as we've seen, inevitably leads to the long-term suffering of stress, burnout, and those delayed explosions.
So as we close out, I'll leave you with this question to reflect on. In your own life, what discomfort, what sadness, what fear, what short pain have you been systematically avoiding? And in doing so, turning into a long debt that your body is still paying for. The very first step to breaking the loop is simply seeing it. Take a moment to think on that. Thanks for joining us.